Hi everyone, we're back with a new episode of Model Talk. My name is Katerina.
And I'm Candace.
And talking about being an accomplished fashion model.
Well, our next guest has led quite an exciting life. So let's hear from Lorelei Shellist as she talks about what it was like to be a model in the age where Christie Brinkley reigned supreme. So Lorelei, you started modeling officially in 1975. And since then, you've walked the Paris runways, you've been on the cover of Women's Wear Daily with Bob Mackie, no less. You all the big ones you knew, Zoli, John Casablancas, Eileen Ford. So tell us, what was it like modeling back then?
Well, okay, so I was working with all of those agencies. Because I had a long career, I worked my way through all of them, starting with Mary Webb Davis here in Los Angeles.
Oh, sure.
She had her business on La Cienega. And I remember driving up there when I was barely 15 in my own car and walking in and meeting her, and she was a legend. She looked like a ballerina, and she was the top. She taught Eileen Ford and Nina Blanchard.
Oh, I didn't know
she was
that.
the one who broke those ladies into the business.
Oh, wow.
And I walked in and I met with her, and she said, "You have an overbite. Go get braces and come back to me after you've had braces." And I was shocked. I went out into my car and I sat there and I cried.
Oh, no.
And then I came back 6 months later and I had more pictures, and there was a guy named Tom Hahn who was a wonderful guy there, an agent, and he was the print department. She was the runway. And he picked me up right then and there. I never had braces or anything, but I realized that I was young enough to where my teeth were bigger than my face. And my face had to catch up with my teeth.
No, so you had to like grow into yourself.
I had to grow into my looks. Yeah, exactly. You know, we're awkward at that age.
But at that age, though, there's certain standards back then that modeling had, and you had all the standards. Why didn't you talk about that? Because wasn't it like 5'10" and above, and it was so different than today?
Oh no, models could be 5'8" at that time.
Okay, I didn't know that.
That was like the height, minimum. And I was 5'9.5", so I crossed that threshold. And but at the time, really there was so much American Pie. The girls were really blonde hair, blue eyes, big smiles. It was Christie Brinkley time at that,
Right.
and those were the girls ahead of me. And so for me, because I was dark hair and more exotic looking, it was more of a challenge to get the work. And that's where Zoli came in. Zoli was the modeling agency in New York that handled the girls that were a little more exotic.
Well, didn't you meet, because I read your book too, Runway, Runaway, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but didn't you also meet with Eileen Ford, and what did she tell you?
Yes, I drove across country when I was 16, and I went in to see her, and she took me on right away, and I said, well, I need to go back to California and get rid of my apartment and close up shop. I'll be back at the end of the summer. And when I arrived in her office and to meet with her, she said, who are you? I would never take you with these Los Angeles photographs. This is not fashion. And I looked at her and I was like, are you kidding me? I said, I just gave up my apartment, sold my car, came across country, found a place to live, and now you're telling me you're not going to represent me? What am I supposed to do?
Right, right.
And she looked at me and she thought, wow, this girl's got gumption. Okay. She said, okay, well, we'll try you out on the test board. And she took me on, but she didn't really pay attention to me because she didn't have a big investment in me. And at the time, she was bringing girls over from Sweden. It was the thing to bring Swedish girls, and they were blonde hair, blue eyes, big smiles, and very natural and very open. And it was the 70s. The American girls were a little more puritanical at the time, but the Swedish girls were just like, love me, baby, and that was part of what she was selling. And so I sat around there for quite a while, and then had to get a job working as a waitress in Herald Square Deli by Macy's, and to pay my bills. And eventually, thank God, somehow somebody introduced me to Zoli. And it was a model who had been a huge top model. Her name was Vicki Hilbert.
Oh, that's what you were telling me about. That's right.
In the 60s. And she introduced me to Zoli, and he took me on. And things changed because the clients that went to him were looking for different types of girls.
So you thought, I agree with you at that time, that it was all kind of blonde, blue-eyed, all-American or all-Sweden. But also there were people like Janice Dickinson, too.
Well, Janice didn't come in until the 80s.
Okay.
This is the 70s. And Janice Dickinson started probably getting Well, yeah, late 70s, I
Uh-huh.
would say. Yeah. And I'd say 1980 was really her heyday. And there were some other girls, Donna Palmer. Do you remember her? She looked like you. And yeah, she was Asian American and gorgeous. They were best friends. And then there was Yasmin.
Oh,
And
Yasmin Bond.
no. Yasmin was before her. And there was
okay.
Apollonia and Verushka, those girls. The Helmut Newton girls. They were the exotics.
And then what about Beverly Johnson? Because wasn't she the
Yes.
first African American woman on the cover of Vogue magazine
I think so, yeah.
in the late 70s? That really broke some barriers. Well, what do you think about today's models? Because before there were such strict standards, it was kind of one look. But today you've got, plus side models, you've got the over curvy models, you've got the petite, and even handicapped and challenge models.
Yes. Well, I think that it's so much more empowering for women to see all kinds of women, and it's all inclusive. And I think that that's really where we need to live from at this day and age, especially when there's so much separation going on in the media, in the news, in the press, and everybody's like bird dogging each other,
Yeah.
policing each other, and nobody can say. So now it's like, however we can find a way to be more inclusive and bring women together and really support each other. And that's one way of supporting them, which is why, my dress comes in all sizes and all colors.
Absolutely, which you're going to get to your dress
Yeah.
for sure. I love it. How do you feel about today's Instagram model, where there's a model who's actually making money not through the clients the traditional way, but through her Instagram account and social media?
Well, I have to say that it's interesting because to be a model is to be your own boss. We are self-employed, independent contractors.
Okay.
And a lot of girls come in and they think that the agency is going to do everything for them, and it doesn't work that way. They don't pay your bills, they don't do your taxes, they don't get your medical insurance, none of that. That's all up to you. And I find a lot of girls come in and they go, oh wow, I get to be pretty and have my picture taken and walk down the runway.
Sure.
But then there's this business part of it. So the girls that take on the Instagram thing, they really want it, and they're running their business.
Right.
And it shows that they're entrepreneurs. So you have to be an entrepreneur, even as a model. I mean, that's what we do.
Right, and that's what you're doing too now, because also you've got a dress. So explain this gorgeous dress to me.
Well, through my career, as I lived in Paris and I worked with the great designers, luckily for me, I got to work with Karl Lagerfeld and Yves Saint Laurent and Bob Mackie and all these people up close and personal, where they were fitting the whole collections on me, and I would be on that collection from nuts to soup to nuts, all the way through. And so I learned everything about how to make clothes, what works, what doesn't work, how to approach things when they don't work. And then plus, as a runway model, I was living out of a suitcase, and I always had to be dressed up and looking great. And you didn't always have an iron, and you didn't want to carry a lot of stuff. So I always wished I had a dress that I could just throw on like a uniform. And the wrap dress came out in the 70s by a woman named Vicky Teal. Diane von Furstenberg later made it really popular. And everyone has a wrap dress now. And I thought, the wrap dress is great for that because you can throw it in your suitcase. But everyone's got one. What can I do? What can I bring to fashion? And boom, I downloaded this idea called the dream dress, and I've created this dress, which is an ITY knit jersey.
Oh, it's lovely. Can I feel it? So it doesn't wrinkle, and
No.
you can throw it in a ball and
It's
put it into...
machine washable. It has spandex in it, so it hugs you in all the right places. It's really comfortable. It's lightweight. And then it's paired with these animal print chiffons, and you can wear it 12 different ways. And if you pull the sash out, you can put it in your hair, around your neck, and you have 6 more
that's
ways of wearing it.
amazing.
So I have about 20 ways of wearing one dress. So if I want to wear this dress all week on my press interviews or whatever at the film festival, I could just wear it different ways and I have a new dress.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, if people wanted to purchase your dress, how would they go about doing that? Where can they find it?
runwaycollection.com, and it's being sold through my website. It will be offered through Amazon and all of that, but we're just getting going. And so runwaycollection.com is the best place to find it right now.
That's so awesome, because I think when I think about you, there are very few models that have a career as long as you've had, that you've constantly reinvented yourself. I kind of see you as the phoenix that's rising out of the ashes, and you're constantly thinking of new things, and I think it's amazing. And that's another thing that I saw in your book. First first off, Runaway is amazing for anybody that's interested in being a fashion model. This is the book. You gave it to me. I literally started it on the airplane, and it was like I couldn't put it down. It was just so compelling. You know, one of the things that I thought that was interesting about the book is there was this one story that you were talking about when there was a guy who said, "Oh, let's go to this great fashion shoot," and I'm not going to say who it is. And if you want to know, you're going to have to read the book. And he said, "I'll take you to this exotic place. We'll do this incredible shoot." And what you didn't know was that he was thinking that there was going to be an exchange of favors for that shoot.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, was this a
But
common
I didn't
thing?
know.
I know you didn't know because you were so young and naive, and you were like, "Well, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to do anything with you because, you know, I'm engaged." Was there always, you know, because we have the Me Too movement today. So what do you think about for young models today, the you know, sexual harassment, sexual abuse? Was that normal being a model? It was just a part of the business back then?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And how did
the
you
more
handle it?
the more the girls did favors, the more popular they became.
Really?
And unfortunately for me, I was pretty adamant about not doing anything
Well, sure.
I didn't want to do. And so I didn't get to be a cover girl.
Wow.
You know, and luckily, like I always say, the runway saved me because all the designers, they were interested in my body, but for a different reason. That it was perfect for hanging clothes
Yeah,
on.
it is. Absolutely.
But yes, I was taken down to St. Bart's for Italian Bazaar, and I was all excited. And he got me to switch from Zoli to Casablanca to
John
Elite.
Casablancas.
Yeah, they were buddies, and so John Casablancas gave me a contract, and off I went to St. Bart's with this photographer. And when I got there, there was no one else there.
Oh.
And I kept saying, "Where are the other girls? Where's the makeup and hair people? Where's the magazine editor? Where is everyone?" He said, "Oh, don't worry about that. I have the clothes. We'll shoot the clothes. Don't worry, you know." And then we got to this little Airbnb or whatever apartment at the time, and he brings me in there, and it's one bedroom.
No.
And him and I.
And you're like, "Wait a minute, hold on a second. What's going on?"
What's going on here? Like, why did you? You know, what are you expecting? I'm with someone. You knew that. And he
Right.
said, "Oh, you don't care about him." And he had my passport. And so I left. I ran away. And but luckily, I ran into his ex-girlfriend, who was a top model at the time. And her mother and her friend, Donna Palmer, was there. They were all there, and they knew what he was like.
Right.
And they saw me, and I told them what happened, and they said, "Let us take care of you."
Wow.
I got saved.
So models helped other models back then in those types of situations.
Yeah, because she had broken up with him and she was done with him, and he had brought me down there to make her jealous. I had no idea.
Because I remember when you said no, that he actually had the audacity to turn the tables on you. And he said, "Oh, well, now you're going to use me to get all these beautiful photos. And that's the reason why you came down here." I just can't believe that he would do that at that time, that it was just kind of accepted.
I thought I had a deal. It had gone
Right.
through the agency. I thought it was legit.
So what type of advice do you have now for young models that are starting out, you know, dealing with these types of challenges and how to handle themselves in these types of situations?
Well, I say it's an easier climate today because of the Me Too movement. I mean, anybody who would try to pull that off in this day and age would be out of their mind.
I think you'd be surprised, though. You would be surprised. I think people are still trying, and they're thinking that it's not that big of a deal.
Well, my advice is to know what you're getting yourself into, to know how to protect yourself, and to really stick to who you are with integrity. Just be integrous, you know, set the intention that, you know, this is my path and no one's going to sway me from it, and I don't have to do favors to get it.
Exactly.
Because if you trust in yourself and you know you're good enough, you're going to just keep moving down your path and no one can get in your way. The thing I wish that I had known was that I was a rebel child. You know, I was a runaway teen. I was,
and that's what you could see in the book. Absolutely.
Yeah, in Runaway, yeah. When I said no, it was like, no, you know.
Right.
I wish that I had learned how to finesse that no a little more and sort of dangle the carrot. So I would say, learn how to dangle the carrot, but don't give them the carrot.
Very good advice.
Yeah.
What do you think over the decades has been your greatest challenge in this industry, whether it's, you know, acting or modeling or dress designing? Has it been that you've had to reinvent yourself? Because you and I have talked about that at lunch before. Or like, what has been your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge in this career is being allowed to be me. because models are not hired to be who you are. They're not hired to speak. They're not hired to give an opinion. They're not hired to do anything but look beautiful. And so some of the times I've gotten myself in trouble where maybe I had too much personality and I brought a little too much to the party.
Or you had too much to say.
Well, you know, I'd be on the runway and I'd be in my element and smiling and things like that. And they, you know, you'll notice a lot of they really want the models to be hangers, to be invisible. Now, some of my clients really like that about me. Karl Lagerfeld, if he had something funny to do on the runway, he'd give it to Lorelei. He'd say, Lorelei, can you sled down the runway in this winter dress, you know? And I would do it, whereas the other girls might not have had the courage to do it. But then I had other designers. I remember working for Jean Patou. It was Christian Lacroix at the time, just before he launched his own brand. And his business manager came to me backstage and he said, don't do too much, you know, just show the clothes.
Yeah.
Just show the clothes. And I was like, oh, okay, got it.
Right.
So I had to tone down my personality.
Well, that's the thing is, to me, it's like you have such a vivacious personality, and I think that's why you would have long-term clients, because they love you so much. And it makes me think, has there ever been a time in your life where you have lost faith in yourself, or you have stopped believing in yourself? Because I don't see you as that, because I mean, I always see you as like a spitfire. I'm not joking. And that's so much, I mean, your eyes twinkle and they sparkle. Has there ever been a time when you've had doubt in yourself as far as your career is concerned, and then how did you overcome it?
Not so much as a model, because I'm one that perseveres. But I did have a setback about a year ago with my dream dresses when I was being led down the garden path by these, you know, QVC and HSN, and they were all promising me like, yeah, we love your dress, we're going to get you on. And then all of a sudden you get the email, oh, sorry, we're not going there. And last year in January, I remember getting an email that it wasn't going anywhere, and I had been invested into this relationship.
Right.
And I was thrown for a loop. I got sick, I got the flu. I think I nursed myself for about 3 weeks under the covers. It was January and I was like, I'm not getting out of bed. I'm not getting back on that horse. God, I'm out of ideas. If this is what you want me to do, show me the way. And I finally turned to a friend of mine and I said, you know, Peter, I don't know how I'm going to get back on that horse. And he goes, Lorelei, you don't want to get on that horse. It's not a winning horse. Get on another horse. And I thought, I don't know, something clicked in me. And about a week later, I woke up and I said, you know what? I'm doing this myself. And I called up my rep and I said, how much would it cost me to roll out my dress? One dress. Because I have a whole collection, but let's just start with one dress. And she said, well, let me get back to you with the numbers. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. And I said, yes. I said yes to myself. I said yes to the universe. I said yes to my dream dress. And I'm launching in about a month. And I have never been happier.
Because I remember you saying that to me the other day too, that you said you felt like now in the time of your life where everything synchronized and has come together, but it was your moving force in deciding by yourself that I'm going to make this dress, you know, come hell or high water. If nobody's going to help me, I'm going to do it on my own. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
To me, it was like the culmination of my career. I know fashion. I know how to wear clothes. I know what women want. I know how to make clothes. All I have to do is, and I just kept asking, you know, how can I be of service? What can I contribute with all of my life experience and who I am and what I've done? How can I make a contribution to women in the world and to beauty? My intention is to create beauty and inspire people to follow their dreams. And so all of a sudden I downloaded this idea of this dream dress, and I don't know what else to do. That's all I know. I'm like, this is everything. And not only that, the name, my brand name, Runway Runaway Collection, came from my book, Runway Runaway.
Which is your life. Yeah. You were the runway runaway.
Yeah, my memoir about running away and becoming a runway model. So, you know, it's all sort of written its own story. And all I have to do is just keep turning the pages.
How interesting. So you're saying basically to have faith in the universe and to have faith in your future and your destiny and your path, because it's going to play out no matter what.
Yeah. Well, you're doing the same thing, right?
I know, because we talked about that. And you know, that actually brings up a good question. I mean, do you think for models that it's important for them to be able to diversify and for them to be well-rounded and think of other things aside from modeling, because a model's career typically is so short?
Well, it doesn't have to be short. I mean, I've never quit modeling. People told me I'd be done by the time I was 30, 30, and that was a long time ago. But I think that it's always, life is more interesting when we are interested in many things. And so the more interested we are in other things, the more interesting we become. The more interesting we become, the more people want to hang out with us and see what we're doing, you know. But as a model, it's a launching pad, really, because being a model throws you into so many situations you would normally never get to be in, and takes you to places you may never get to go to. And so you're exposed. I was exposed to so many different flavors and peoples and customs and traditions and accents and ways of life that it just added more ingredients to who I am.
To the mix.
Yeah.
No, because of that, I have to ask this, because I know I read the book cover to cover. You met all sorts of people, you traveled, you led the rock star lifestyle, and you were, you know, had rock star boyfriends. Can you just tell me a little tidbit of that? Because it's so interesting. And you like literally traveled the world with Def Leppard.
Yes, I did. The Hysteria tour, another time where I lived out of a suitcase. Between his world tour on Hysteria and my runway collections, you know, following the collections around, I was either traveling from where I was working to where he was working.
Well, who is he? So let's talk about
Steve Clark, the lead guitar player and main songwriter from Def Leppard. And bless his heart, he was a lovely man. And so I got to make his stage clothes.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. I designed his whole look, because when I met Steve, I was living in Paris and he had been touring America on the Pyromania tour. And in those days, there was this hairstyle called the mullet. And we used to laugh at that. You know, I was in fashion and he shows up and he was really cute. It was love at first sight. And I said to him, you know, no, we need to kind of grow out that hair a little. Let's groom it. Grow that. And the next thing you know, we're in hotels on the road for Hysteria, and I'm bleaching his hair in the bathroom and blow drying his hair for him. And he had the most beautiful blonde hair by that time. It was long mane of hair. And we talked about his stage clothes, what he wanted to wear on stage. And he told me what he liked. He liked to wear Capezio shoes because he could run around and never slip and fall.
Like ballet slippers?
Yeah. The lace-up Capezio shoes. And later I got him into the pointy cowboy boots, which started everyone. Then the next thing you know, Bon Jovi, everyone was wearing cowboy boots. And we used to buy them in New York. Oh, what was the name of that store? Anyway, so he would tell me what he wanted. He bought me a sewing machine, and I would go around the garment district in New York and find all these bits and pieces, and I would create these jackets that had studs on them and Harley Davidson flags.
How neat.
Flags from around the world. I would get those little tiny flags, you know, that from all the nations, and put those down the sleeves and things like that. And he looked great on stage. And sure enough, he was, every time they would take pictures of the band on tour, the one that came out in the paper the next day would be him.
No.
Yeah. So he got a lot of airplay from that. But his ideas was he was inspired by Jimmy Page and you know, the whole Led Zeppelin thing. And then there was Mick Jagger. So we were he had a cross between both.
But he was almost like, you were his muse in a way too, though. Like, I think he was inspired by you, and you guys had a very similar background as well. And so you were both kind of like wild rebels out in the world, traveling the world together during the 80s.
Yeah, we were. And it was kind of lonely because none of our friends back home had what we had. So it was sort of like we hung on to each other. And we related because we were both on the same level of success at the time.
Right.
And so there was no like awestruck. I mean, there was a little bit. I mean, whenever you fall in love with someone, there's this little bit of, you're awestruck by them and inspired. I think every couple is inspired by each other, or they wouldn't be in love.
Well, do you think that's why a lot of times you always see the cliche of the rock star and the supermodel? Because in your book, you talk about that they kind of lead parallel lives. Yeah. And because of that, they understand each other and where they're coming from. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, you're thrown together in the same arena. You're in the same sandbox. And so those are the people that, you know, you're introduced to, and you're always traveling in foreign places. And so anyone that you can find, that you can connect with, that you have relativity, then there's more comfort in that. There's comfort because it's scary out there and it's lonely out there. You know, it's sort of like you're dog eat dog. And so when you find someone in the mix that gets it, then you're like, phew, I'm not alone. you know.
Well, and also you were starting out at 15. I mean, you were a baby. And if you don't mind me saying this, another thing in the book was Don Henley. And Don Henley from the Eagles, you were 16 years old and you were dating
Barely.
him. Barely, yes. And you guys got into an argument outside of the car and it was nighttime. And you were saying something about your parents and you were 16. He goes, yeah, where are your parents anyways?
Yeah.
Because you were in the world by yourself as a model, taking care of yourself at that age. You were basically an adult at 16 years old, and that's how you've been independent and carried yourself through this career the entire time.
Yeah. I think I was more of an emancipated minor. That was what I was considered
at that
the
time.
More than a runaway. I wasn't a runaway that was living on the streets. I was I ran away from home and then I emancipated and I took care of myself. And my parents were like, look, if you don't want to live under our roof, you're on your own. Don't expect a dime from us. So, you know, for a lot of years I was angry about that.
Sure.
But now that I know the truth is that they set me up to be independent. You know, had they nursed me and enabled me and spoiled me, I wouldn't have been doing what I am doing today. I learned how to stand up for myself. I learned how to make ends meet. I learned how to work hard and to achieve and follow my dreams.
But conversely, you weren't that happy when it happened to your niece, because you were saying that when your niece came to you and you said that her parents had the inconvenience of having to raise her. So you were not happy about that, though, because you were afraid that she was going to go through the similar situations that you had gone through.
Well, she didn't have the determination and drive
that
for a
have.
career
Okay.
that I had, and she was looking really lost, and she was doing the mohawk and the Doc Marten boots
Sure.
and the plaid, and she was going to be a punk, and I was just afraid she'd get really involved in drugs and go down the wrong path. She, you know, a lot of that punk movement, even though they're anarchists to a fault, like in the negative sense. You know, anarchy is a great thing when you live in the light side. But if you go into the shadow side of anarchy, then, you know, you're really just against everything and nothing works for you.
And there's no positivity.
Yeah.
So and you always wanted to be a model. I mean, that was my
Yeah.
understanding, that you thought of it when you were a teenager and you just went for it.
Since I was 4.
Since you were 4 years
Oh
old?
yeah, I was modeling for my dad since I was 4. My mom would take me shopping, and I always was the perfect sample size. Even to this day, I'm a perfect sample size. And so she didn't know which dress to buy me, so she'd buy me 4 of them, and I'd come home and I'd wear all 4 of them that day.
Oh my gosh, because I remember you said in the book too also that you went to an agent and they said, you may not be a supermodel cover girl, but you're going to be, because you are the perfect size, you're going to be in the stable and you're going to be somebody who works every single day. Who was that? Because I remember them telling you that.
Oh,
and you did.
It was
in Europe.
Yes, it was in Paris, and I'd been through a couple of agencies, and they kept telling me to leave the agencies because I wasn't playing favors with their rich guys, and I wasn't, you know, playing favors with the photographers and so on. And so they said to me, Lorelei, you are not the type to work in Paris. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm working. You know, I'm paying my own bills. I don't owe you any money. I'm independent. You know, what's the problem? And luckily, at that same time, they let go of the guy who ran the runway division. They let go of the guy who ran the runway division. And he was gay, and he loved fashion, and he loved exotic girls. And he had been fired, and I got kicked out. And the next thing you know, they started calling me and saying, Chanel called, and they want to know if you're interested in working under contract over there. And I said, well, what did you tell them? And they said, well, we don't know what to tell them. I said, give them my phone number. Because they didn't want to represent me anymore. And then the next day I got a call from Ungaro. They called me again, and I said, give them my phone number. And then the next day I got another invitation to work for the Germans for Stuyvesant cigarette campaign. And they said, we gave them your number. And I said, great, thanks. Too bad I can't work in Paris.
Wow.
And so I called this agent at home and I said, Patrick, what am I going to do? Chanel wants to give me a contract. Emmanuel Ungaro wants to give me a contract. How do I do this? And he said, don't worry, I'll take care of you. And he said, I'll handle it for you. And he didn't even want to be paid. And I said, no, Patrick, if you're going to do the work, I'm going to pay you.
Right.
So whatever your commission is. And he became my manager. I was one of 2 models in Paris that had a manager instead of an agent at the height of my career.
Wow. So now is it different? Do models have agents and or managers, or primarily agents that work with you?
I don't know of any that have managers unless they are working in television and acting and so
Right, because
forth.
I was about to say, because most actors have managers and agents,
Yeah.
you know, and you can have two at the same time, but I didn't know if it was the same for models.
No, not in those days. No one was a manager. But they, you know, legally in New York, they call themselves management agencies because they can actually collect different tariffs. They can charge better
different
rates.
rates.
If they call themselves agents,
It's a
they
10%,
can't.
right.
And if they call themselves managers,
It could be
it's
15.
something else. But they don't really manage.
Oh, crazy. So now you
That's
still...
a little dirty secret of, but anyway, I shouldn't be talking.
You've been talking, what are you talking about? But you're still a runway model today. You're still a beautiful model today.
Thank you.
How do you consider it? Is it a different age bracket or is it a different look? I mean, like, what do they consider? What does your agent consider you today?
Well, again, it's all inclusive, and they've finally gotten the message that women my age want to see women they can relate to.
Absolutely.
On the runway.
Right.
And when I do shows, and you know, they're far and few, of course, because they don't always book ladies like me in shows anymore, but I always get these women that come up to me and say, thank you for representing our group, our age group, because they can see the dress on someone my age and go, oh, okay, that's appropriate. I can
I
wear
like it,
that.
exactly.
But when you see it on a young girl, it looks great on her, and they know that it's not going to work on them. And so that's the benefit of the all-inclusive, you know, we generation now.
Well, that's what you're saying with your dress too. You were telling me it goes from what size to what size because you are trying to make it all inclusive for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. It starts at a small and it goes up to 2X, and it'll look great on the curvy woman because it's, you know, it's that kind of Marilyn Monroe thing. It's that dress that could blow up on the fan, you know, in that famous picture of Marilyn Monroe. And so, you know, as long as a woman is comfortable with her curves, then she can wear this dress. And even if she isn't, maybe she'll learn to love her curves.
Absolutely. Lorelei, thank you so much for coming today. I had such a wonderful time. I love seeing
Thanks
you
for
each and
inviting
every
me.
time.
You're gorgeous.
So are you.
On the next episode of Models Talk, Brittany Martinez shares how a person's attitude can affect their entire career.